All right, let's jump right in, shall we? Today's deep dive, Jesuit history and practices.
Sounds a bit dry, maybe.
Yeah, maybe at first glance. But trust me, we're going to uncover some unexpected twists and turns. We're talking power, intrigue, even a bit of scandal.
Scandal. Now you've got my attention.
So we've got excerpts from historical documents and books, right? And we're going to use those to kind of time travel back and peek behind the curtain of this super influential order.
I've always found it fascinating how the Jesuits emerged right in the middle of all the chaos of the Reformation, a real turning point in European history, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. We're talking 1540. Europe is in an uproar. The Protestant Reformation is in full swing, and into this whirlwind steps Ignatius Loyola.
A wounded soldier.
Yeah, a soldier who ditched the battlefield for, well, a different kind of battlefield, yes.
He founds this new religious order, right? The Society of Jesus. But they weren't your typical monks, were they?
Not even close. Loyola, he'd been a soldier, and that military background, it's like it's baked into the DNA of the Jesuits.
Strict discipline, total obedience, this unwavering loyalty to the Pope. They were structured like some kind of spiritual army.
Spiritual army, huh? So what were their battles then?
Well, unlike some monastic orders that kind of retreated from the world, the Jesuits were all about engagement. They were out there spreading Catholicism, and their methods, they were often, well, let's just say adaptable.
Adaptable. That's one way to put it. I was going through some of the sources, and some of these stories are wild.
Yeah.
We've got one account of a Jesuit in the Americas who convinced a Native American chief that Jesus was like this warrior who scalped his enemies.
I read that one. Pretty out there.
And then there's another one in the East Indies where a Jesuit claimed to be a direct descendant of Brahma.
You know, as shocking as those examples might seem, they really highlight just how far the Jesuits were willing to go to achieve their goal.
They were masters of understanding their audience and crafting their message, huh?
Exactly. And that strategic thinking, it extended to education as well. They founded schools, universities. They even infiltrated Protestant institutions.
Talk about playing the long game. And it's amazing how quickly they rose to power. From a handful of followers, they grew to nearly 11,000 members in less than 50 years.
Confessors to kings, control over vast educational networks, and they amassed a significant amount of wealth, too.
It's a story of ambition and achievement, that's for sure. But, as they say, the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
Well, with all that influence, suspicion and opposition were bound to follow.
And things took a pretty dramatic turn in the 18th century. In 1762, the French Parliament actually abolished the Jesuits, accusing them of undermining society.
And then they were expelled from Spain, too.
And then, in 1773, Pope Clement IV went and dissolved the entire order. It's crazy.
There were even rumors that he feared for his own life, thought the Jesuits might try to poison him.
Wow. It makes you wonder what kind of power they held that even the Pope felt threatened. And then, of course, there's the whole mystery of the secret instructions of the Jesuits.
Ah, yes, the secret instructions.
This document claims to reveal the Jesuits' hidden playbook for gaining power. And let me tell you, some of it is pretty wild.
It's important to remember that the authenticity of those secret instructions is hotly debated.
Yeah, for sure. But even if we take it with a grain of salt, it gives us this fascinating glimpse into the anxieties and suspicions surrounding the Jesuits at the time.
Absolutely. It reflects the growing unease about their ambition, their secrecy, their willingness to use any means necessary to achieve their goals.
And the instructions themselves are pretty intense. They talk about targeting wealthy widows, demanding absolute obedience from their followers, suggesting that any tactic is justified if it advances the society's interests. It's like something out of a spy movie.
The language is definitely dramatic. But it's crucial to consider the historical context. The Jesuits saw themselves as engaged in a spiritual battle, and they believed their methods were justified in service of a higher purpose.
So it's all about perspective then. Their enemies saw manipulation and power grabs, but the Jesuits themselves saw their actions as serving the greater good.
That's a compelling way to frame it. And it speaks to the inherent complexities of interpreting historical events.
It makes you wonder, though, were these extreme tactics a sign of desperation or a calculated strategy?
That's a question historians continue to grapple with. It's likely a combination of factors reflecting both the pressures they faced and their unwavering dedication to their mission. You know what's really remarkable? Even after they were officially shut down, the Jesuits They didn't just disappear.
Really? So even with the Pope's decree, they were still out there doing their thing.
Yeah, they managed to keep their network going, continue some of their work, maybe a bit more discreetly, of
I
course.
mean, I get it. They had a lot of enemies, but
Uh-huh.
still to operate under the radar with that level of scrutiny, that's pretty impressive.
It really speaks to their resilience, their organization. Plus, they had a lot of loyal supporters, even within the church hierarchy.
Right, right. And let's not forget, they were known for their scholarship, their intellectual pursuits, so that part of their legacy, it never really went away.
That's right.
So how did they manage to come back from what seemed like a knockout blow? I mean, the Pope dissolved the entire order.
It was a combination of things, really. The political winds shifted. Some rulers started seeing the Jesuits as, well, a stabilizing force, especially with all the revolutionary ideas spreading through Europe at the time.
So they became useful again.
Exactly. And they were always good at navigating those complex political currents. But there was also this growing sense of nostalgia for their past. People started viewing them as victims, even romanticizing their suppression.
Like martyrs, almost.
Kind of, yeah. So their image got a bit of a makeover, which definitely helped pave the way for their comeback. But let's go back to this idea of the Jesuits as this secretive, almost sinister force. I mean, some of our sources, they hint at some pretty intense stuff.
Yeah, there's no denying that the Jesuits have been linked to all sorts of intrigue and conspiracy theories over the years. Books, films, even video games.
Right. The Jesuit boogeyman.
Yeah.
It's a popular character.
So how much of that is based in reality and how much is just, a good story?
It's hard to say for sure. The fact that they were so secretive, their methods were often unconventional, it definitely added to the mystery. And there were times when, yeah, their actions raised some ethical questions.
But we're looking at these events through centuries of historical interpretation and probably a bit of dramatic flair thrown in there too.
Exactly. So separating fact from fiction, it can be a challenge.
Okay, so what about the secret instructions? Our sources present it as this blueprint for Jesuit domination, but then there's the whole question of whether it's even real.
Well, the secret instructions, as we've discussed, they supposedly lay out the Jesuits' strategies for gaining power and influence. It first appeared in print in the 17th century, and it caused a huge uproar, really fueled anti-Jesuit sentiment.
And the Jesuits themselves, they denied it completely, right?
Oh, absolutely. They said it was a forgery created by their enemies to make them look bad. And there are some inconsistencies in the text that seem to support that claim.
So we have this potentially explosive document, but it could be a complete fabrication. It's a real head-scratcher.
Wow.
What do historians make of it all?
Well, there's no clear consensus. Some believe the secret instructions, even if they're exaggerated, reflect some real Jesuit practices. Others say it's all made up. The debate goes on.
So even with all our modern research and analysis, we still can't say for sure what's real and what's fake. It's kind of frustrating, but also fascinating.
It just goes to show how powerful the Jesuit story is. I mean, they were a complex organization operating in a complex world. Their actions, their motivations, it was all very nuanced, open to interpretation. And that's what keeps people interested centuries later.
Okay, I gotta ask.
Yeah.
Imagine those lost Jesuit archives were found. What would be the most groundbreaking discovery?
Well, what if we found proof that they were involved in major political events? Or details about their finances that confirmed those rumors about hidden wealth?
Wow, that would be huge.
Right. Or imagine finding personal letters, diaries, things like that, getting a glimpse into the minds of individual Jesuits?
That would be incredible. To see the human side of this group that's often shrouded in myth, so many possibilities.
Yeah.
But what's more likely? A bombshell revelation that changes everything, or a deeper, more nuanced understanding of who they were and how they operated?
It's hard to predict. Maybe it would be a bit of both. The most exciting discoveries are often the ones that challenge our assumptions while also adding layers of complexity to the story.
That's what makes history so interesting, right?
Exactly. And the Jesuits, with their long and complicated history, they're a perfect example of that.
Okay, listener, time for a little thought experiment. Imagine you're the historian who finds those lost Jesuit archives. What are you most hoping to find? What secrets do you think might be hidden in those pages? It's hard to get those secret instructions out of my head. Real or not, they really make you think, huh?
It is fascinating how that document, authentic or not, has really shaped the way we view the Jesuits. It's almost become part of their story.
It's like a historical Rorschach test, right? People see what they want to see. A blueprint for world domination, A cautionary tale about ambition.
Exactly. And that's why the Jesuits continue to captivate us. They embody this duality, this blend of intellectual brilliance and ruthless ambition, spiritual devotion, political maneuvering. It's a potent mix.
So let's step back from the conspiracies and controversies for a moment. What is the real legacy of the Jesuits? What impact have they had on the world?
Oh, their impact is undeniable. Education, science, global exploration, they've played a major role.
It's more than just the religious sphere, right?
Absolutely. The Jesuits have always been engaged with the world. They embraced intellectual pursuits, adapted to changing landscapes, art, literature, music, architecture. They've left their mark everywhere.
It's like they've had a hand in shaping Western culture.
In many ways, yes. And that's what makes their story so relevant today, their rise, their fall, and their eventual comeback. It teaches us about power, about secrecy, about the human desire for faith and knowledge.
A story that still resonates centuries later.
Yes, and it raises some important questions, too, about powerful institutions, the ethics of persuasion, the tension between dogma and critical thinking.
Okay, so as we wrap up our Jesuit deep dive, what's the one key takeaway for our listeners? What should they be thinking about?
I would say approach the world with curiosity, but also with discernment. Question assumptions, seek out different perspectives. Remember that history is rarely black and white.
The Jesuits are a perfect example of that, aren't they?
Exactly. Even the most straightforward narratives can be full of surprises and complexities.
And that's what makes exploring history so much fun, right? Is it a never-ending puzzle?
Always more to learn, more to discover, more to debate. The deep dive is just one way to start exploring.
Well said. And on the note, listeners, we're signing off. But remember, the deep dive is always ready to take on your stack of sources. Until next time, stay curious.